Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Monday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. Yesterday's post-game show is getting more action than any in recent history, with over 75 comments, many of which were from Raiders fans who were not very happy with me. The tone of the program was frustration, anger, disappointment, dismay, fatigue, and just absolute vulgarity, of which I'm quite proud, by the way. How else are you supposed to respond to something like we witnessed on Sunday? However, I do want to make a clarifying point that at no time during the course on Sunday did I ever make disparaging remarks about the Oakland Raiders. None of my wrath is directed at the Oakland Raiders, and why the fan base took my complaining about the officiating so personally only tells me that they know that they won the game by an unfair means as well. So I don't know what else. Hi, Rick. How you doing?
Real good. Seems like only yesterday we were here.
Yeah, it seems like, yeah, you're right. Except, 24 hours, it purifies, it cleanses, it slices, it dices, and it makes julienne fries. It's one of these things that time heals some wounds, and some wounds just go on and fester and infect. And this one isn't going to go away anytime soon. But just clarifying to Oakland fans that I got nothing against John Gruden. I've got nothing against Derek Carr. I have nothing against the team. They were 0-3 coming in, and they should have been 0-4 going out. They came up 8 points short. And in a legitimate ending of the game, they would have ended up 8 points short. That's all I'm saying. I have nothing bad about the team itself. And for every Marshawn Lynch play that you can say was terminated prematurely, I can say at least the goddamn whistles blew. I'm going to respond to general comments that were made about the show. The whistles blew. Now, you could make the argument that, well, his forward progress really wasn't stopped. And I'm not going to disagree with you on this. I'm not going to tell you that the officials were good in any regard. But at least the fucking whistles blew. You could hear that at home on television when the play was run live. What about Derek Carr's fumble? When no whistles were blown, how in the hell could his forward motion in a league that is protecting quarterbacks as hard as they are, how in the hell could his forward progress have been stopped when whistles didn't even blow? So, again, but it all comes down to, and I'll start the show, and it will be the last I speak of the officials, except in the hopes that each of them has a severe stroke and can no longer officiate games. Here's what an NFL spokesman said the league did in order to make this great final decision on the spot that cost the Cleveland Browns the football game. Although no angle offered a full view of the ball's location once Hyde was down, an NFL spokesman said the league pieced together two angles to clarify that Hyde's wrist and elbow hit the ground before the ball reached the 19. Here's the quote. From the line feed, you can see the line to gain is just past the 19-yard line, the spokesman said. One replay angle shows Hyde's wrist and elbow hit the ground simultaneously. When you go back to the line feed, you see the wrist hit the ground and you know the elbow is down. At that point, you're able to clearly see the ball is short of the line to gain. Now, I will make a historical reference to our older viewers, and Rick, you're going to love this because I know you think I'm a funny guy, all right? And I think I'm a funny guy too. I remember a little bit of video that had multiple angles, and it was called the Zapruder film. And to
the left.
We're going to see which way Kennedy's head jerked before his brain matter splattered all over Jackie O. Okay? That's what we're going to do with this. Hi, Bronk. And, piecing together video is a dangerous business. Look, the fact that Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission was scary enough because he couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time. But trying to piece together an assassination of a U.S. president based on a film that is not spot on angled is really a rather difficult thing to do. In fact, here we are all these years after Kennedy's assassination. We still have 14 conspiracy theories as to how he died. My point is this. When you piece together videos, you're guessing. This is what we call guessing. It's what we call or extrapolating, SAT word, okay? When we're extrapolating, that means we're guessing. It's just a fancy way of saying we're guessing. So I thought the whole theory behind replay was to have completely substantiated evidence to turn a play over. But here we are extrapolating and guessing. So for all of the Oakland fans who are angry with me, just to understand, nothing personal against your team, but the referees guessed when they should have known. They made the call on the field. There was no evidence that was directly lined up, and they screwed Cleveland. I'm done talking about the officials now.
This might be the first time a ball game has been photoshopped.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would urge anybody, if you recorded the game, to look at the play in real time and look at where they originally placed the ball and where, after realizing, then when the and again, what will happen is you'll see the ball placed, and then all of a sudden you will see the ball suddenly replaced in the next frame to show where the ball actually landed. That gave the Browns the first down. That was where they measured from. Originally, the field judge put the ball down in the wrong place intentionally. All right, just watch the game. Don't take my word for it. This isn't a Zapruder film. This is the goddamn film that came from Fox, okay? This is right
on script.
Yeah, I mean, this is not some great thing.
Right here. Move ball back.
It wasn't taken on a Bell and Howell. This was the actual telecast of the game.
Can I make a couple comments about this?
Most certainly. Oh, one thing before you do, Bronk.
Sure.
Obviously, it was a very testy post-game show, and I am all about getting people on the panel. And Steven wrote to me and said, maybe it's a better idea if you don't have people right away on the show because it was too many people talking over one another. I am going to pick up where Baker Mayfield leaves off. That's on me, folks. That's on me.
I mean,
I've got
it's always going to be chaos yesterday.
I know, but I got to police it better. I do. I have to specifically call out to people and let you make your comments. And I was just overly emotional, and
I mean, it is what it is. It's happened, and it's over with. The comments I want to make about the refereeing is that transparency should be a requirement for this whole reviewing process. Now, I watch other sports in England, and cricket has a wonderful way of video referring batsmen being out in the sense that the umpire on the ground refers it up to an umpire up in the stands. They view the videotape, and their conversation is piped over into the ground and also through the television network watching it. So you can hear what they're both saying. There's no tricky collusion going on. And then they decide from the video evidence whether a batsman is out or not. And they also use computer generation of ball tracking. And it's an amazing thing. Now, what the NFL could do to emulate that is have the referee on the ground looking at the feed, asking for the feed, and you hear his voice over the network so that you know that there's nothing shady going on while they're doing that process. So and then you actually show the angles that he's looking at to the viewing public as well at the same time. And that would solve all this problem about, people accusing of the referees being paid off, and people can see how that decision was arrived at. I think the NFL needs to look at transparency on these refereeing, reviewing decisions, and that will make the game seem more legitimate.
Well, and to respond to that, if they had a specific piece of footage or an angle that they could show us, they would have.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I have a comment about that, too. They have drones now. They have these remote-controlled drones. There's no reason why they can't have a drone following the football, so you have a side-on view of the ball at any one particular time during the play. I know it'd be hard when the ball's actually being thrown in the air to do that, but when the ball's on the ground, a drone can travel just as fast as Carlos fucking Hyde can. So that's an innovation that'll be a few years down the road. But they need to do that because, there's no reason why the NFL should be subjected to comments like I gave them about the refs being paid off, and making bad calls because they're being paid off. That shouldn't happen.
Well, and the other thing with that is they're piecing together. And they're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, trying to piece two disparate angles together without a real spatial relationship involved.
Well, let us see that process, and then we can say, "Oh, it's an honest mistake by the camera angles and stuff." If we could see that process that referee was going through, then we could maybe have sympathy that it was a hard decision and blah blah blah.
Yeah, but the problem is they don't have it. Believe me, if they had it, they would show it.
Mr. Mouet, can I ask you a question?
Well,
why is there not? I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to ask you guys a question. This has been debated for the last couple of years. If the technology's there, use it. Why the hell is there not a chip installed in the fucking football?
That could be done too.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
That could be done too.
Well, I mean, what happens is under normal circumstances, a play like this would never be overturned. I mean.
Correct.
And, when we got the 2-point conversion with Duke Johnson, they had to go back and make sure that his knee wasn't down and that he catapulted himself with his hand without his knee touching and thrust himself over the threshold of the goal line. And they looked at it and they got it right. If you look at the video of Carlos Hyde, they claim when his arm was down. I've looked at the video, blown it up, and done everything I could do from the angles that were given us from the live television feed. And the bottom line is this. His leg doesn't touch the ground.
Yeah,
and by the time his forearm hits the ground, the ball is already so close to where the spot was, you couldn't possibly, with a micrometer, determine the differential. So this has nothing to do with technology. This has to do with motives. And I cannot get into the league's head and tell you what all of the motives are for the NFL. I will leave that to your imaginations.
But the brain tells what the eyes can see. So my opinion is if you put a chip in the ball, you can actually have a pinpoint decimal reading of where that ball should be placed. Also, whenever they have the marker for the first down, if you look at the camera, sometimes the marker will move. You'll see it shake as it vibrates. And also when the referees are running sideline to determine the spot of the ball, sometimes they'll start off running a straight line, then they'll drift to the left or drift to the right. And I see that from bird's eye view, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is either going to be a bad spot in either way because you're not walking a straight line.
The problem with the chip in the ball idea is where do you put the chip? You put the chip in the center of the ball? Do you put the chip on the tips of the ball? Where do you put the chip? Or is the ball one gigantic chip? There's issues with that, but I think the idea of having drones follow the ball on may be a way around that. But obviously there's technical problems that need working out with this. The league needs to be transparent.
Well, again, I think that I look at the whole play. I look at where the ball was originally placed, where it ended up being placed, and I can't help but think from watching it that where they ended up placing the ball, and they measured it in front of millions of people watching for the whole world to see, and everyone saw that it was a first down where they placed it, and then it automatically has to go back up to the NFL Central for a replay as far as for a reconsideration. And what it tells me is they told somebody that they fucked up by putting the ball where it was a first down, and they got to somehow get out of this.
Yeah. Well, that's
sorry, but
that's the accusation you can make. And
the only conclusion I can come to, because why would you measure it before? If you didn't know where the ball was and should be placed, why would you measure it that way? And the other one is, why don't you go to NFL Central, if it has to go there anyway, and say, okay, guys, use your great piecing together mechanism and tell us where to place the ball. The bottom line is, once you've measured it, you've shown it's a first down, all you're doing is you're saying, whoops, we better move it back. They are not supposed to get that first down.
Yeah, that's a logical argument, and I have no answer for that. I mean, the whole idea of having chains on the sidelines archaic. You don't even need that anymore, unless you got a high school game that's got no cameras and no technology. Why do you even need manual chains and chain men anymore? You don't.
Remember last year when they were determining the first down and they were stretching the chain and the ball was separated like this, so the referee put the damn paper in the middle?
Yeah, absolutely.
Index card. Stuck it right in it. Oh, perfect fit.
And it was touching. He's like, oh, it touched. First down. I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, that was the Brandon Whedon era when we got screwed regularly, back then, too.
Now, Kevin Sayers is in the chat room, and he says, I'm a Browns fan, and yeah, that was a bad call. But I'm tired of blaming refs for the Browns losing. How about the 4 turnovers, our defense allowing 45 points, a terrible play called on our own, too? Okay, let's go beyond
that.
No, I'm going to get to it now.
We'll get to it.
It's a fair question. First, the 4 turnovers. I'm going to take everything first in its entirety. The 4 turnovers, allowing 45 points, and a terrible play called in R2. If you take all of the 4 turnovers that we committed, we still won the football game. Okay?
Correct.
If you the 45 points came as a direct result of the placement of the ball and the overtime that shouldn't have happened. So what I will tell you is this. Nobody's happy about 4 turnovers. The Browns did not play a clean game. And maybe the only team in the league, if they were on the road, that they could have beaten would have been the Oakland Raiders, predicated on the fact that they had 4 turnovers and their defense was spotting field position for a lot of the game. Also, you cannot change the fact that there were 2 scoring. And if we're going to look at this, Kevin, let's be fair about this. You're pointing at the defense. And I'm telling you that there were 2 plays that the Cleveland Browns ran, one for 63, one for 41, that were one-play drives, and the defense was thrown back out on the field. That the defense played 74 snaps compared to played 90 snaps as opposed to 74 snaps of the Browns. The defense was on the field because we scored quickly. Even the pass to Callaway was a big gainer. Their drives were much more sustained, held onto the ball. The defense was tired. Going in overtime was suicide. There was no way the Browns could possibly win in that scenario. But the first thing I say is you got to clean up the game. You can't have 4 turnovers. I don't blame the interception that resulted in the pick 6 on Baker Mayfield. The guy slipped on the field as about 40 other people did later on throughout the game. That is the bounce of the ball. That happens. That's how they got 7 of their points. There were a lot of short field turnover things. The miscommunication on the snap, I put on Baker Mayfield and his center. No question about that. Dropped passes, 6 of them by the receivers. I don't put that on Baker Mayfield, but that's not a clean game. And you can make the argument that based on the lack of cleanliness in the game, that the Browns didn't deserve to win. But I'm saying that with all of the drop passes, with all of the turnovers, with all of the play calls that we kind of shake our head at, we won the football game in regulation time. We were cheated. Had it just stayed the way that it was designed originally and called on the field, we take a knee and we leave winners.
Yep.
Right? So the loss was not self-inflicted, Kevin. What was self-inflicted were the mistakes. The loss was determined by the stripes. All right? That's all. And you're not going to get me to defend a sloppy game. But you're also not – I mean, if you had to look at that game in its entirety to sit there and say, well, the Raiders deserve to win, you'd have to be blind. You'd have to be an absolute idiot to suggest such a thing, you know. And both Joe Fox and Kevin Sayers are blaming Hugh Jackson on this. And look, I know we're not happy with Hugh as a head coach. I don't put this on Hugh. This one is completely different. This is, you know, we scored 42 points. The Browns haven't scored 42 points in such a long time. I'm thrilled with the offensive production we got. Okay. And yeah, since 2007. And that was 52-45 shootout, right? That was the Cincy game.
Bengals, yeah. That's before I started watching Moohead Radio. Do you realize how long ago that was? I started watching it in that year, 2007.
Hey, Mr. Moohead, isn't it fair to say that the eye test for the refs doesn't work? I mean, we need some sort of technology to come in place to figure this shit out with first downs, where to mark the ball, because the eye test just doesn't work.
Well, you know, what I would tell you that works is whatever team is supposed to get the advantage gets the advantage. And if you had nearly foolproof technology, that would not be the case. And I honestly think that this is a business and this is the way that they want it to be, because you're absolutely right. There would be something if they wanted it. They don't want it. And the reason they don't want it is the same reason that Major League Baseball got rid of the whole computerized strike zone things when it became apparent that the umpires really had their own kind of agenda going on behind home plate. All it does is it shows how inept the system is, or at the worst, how predetermined it is.
Because what pisses me off is the refs are never held accountable for officiating. Like in other words, they'll come out and say, like an NBA game, for example, they'll say the next day, well, there were 4 missed calls and that's totally on me. But I mean, how many times do we have to hear that? Where's the accountability, though? And their argument is, well, it's a human element. It's a human element. Well, obviously the eye test isn't working. Obviously you guys are idiots. And I understand, you know, the game going fast. Some of you can't catch everything. But obviously something needs to be addressed. Something needs to be done to help these officials get the right calls on the field.
Yeah, again, and I let my viewers respond. Kevin says he's not blaming Mayfield for the turnovers, but there were 4. And my point is, if the Browns played better, then the bad calls would not have mattered. Well, we know that. But what we also know about the Browns is that Derek Carr is 5 years into his career. All right. And the Cleveland Browns are really 4 games off of 1-31. All right.
Yeah.
And we're coming off of Desolation Row, and nobody expect the Cleveland Browns to even be a competitive football team this year. And nobody would believe that the Browns would go on the road and win a football game. And if they did, that it wouldn't be perfect. All I'm saying, Kevin, is that foibles and all, errors and all, mistakes and all, we still won the game. And had you gotten the spot that you deserved, what would you be saying today, Kevin? You would still be saying, boy, you know, we got to clean up those mistakes. But boy, I'm glad we got those 42 points, man. Thanks to Baker being out there. We got points on the board. And boy, we're going to have to do a better job defensively. But you would not be saying what you're saying had the game just been officiated correctly. Now, one more thing about this, and it is where I'll agree with Kevin, and Kevin's going to be nodding his head when he hears me say this. You got to make a play, because when things don't go your way, you've got to show resilience. And when that spot was taken away from the Browns and they punted the ball off, we had opportunities to stop the Raiders. And what I would do and question is they got the ball down the field and they scored the touchdown. All right. I know that we had 3 timeouts left and 30 seconds left. I understand that. But if you stop them on the 2-point conversion, the game is over with the exception of a fluke onside kick. Now, wouldn't you call timeout to set your defense before a 2-point conversion? Wouldn't you try to do whatever you could at that point to win the game right then and there? There are, just like there's no crying in baseball, there are no tomorrows. You do today.
So like freezing.
I'm sorry?
It's like freezing the kicker, like you're suggesting on 2-point conversion.
Right. But also getting an idea with a young team of what you want to accomplish defensively on that goal line. And because your defense is tired, quite honestly, they were on the field too much.
That was the decisive play of the game. I mean, if you go back to the Ohio State-Penn State game, there were 3 timeouts on the decisive play of that game on the 4th down and 5 that Penn State had towards the end of the game. You know, there was 2 timeouts by Ohio State and 1 by Penn State. So there should have been timeouts on that 2-point conversion. And I was like complaining about that at the time.
Agreed.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah, Hawaii missed a thing there.
Yeah, and again, that 2-point conversion, the Raider receiver wanted the ball more than the defender.
And he was taller too.
He was taller. You got to make the play. I mean, you walk away from that experience, and that's the truth. Okay, and I only deal in truth. I don't deal in just crazy shit and theories. The truth is that you got something go against you and you had it snatched away from you, but you still had opportunities to walk off that field a winner. Mark Ross said, I said it best yesterday, the NFL 45, the Browns 42. It was a badly officiated game. There's no question. Brian Baylark is saying that Way has nothing to do with this. We have coordinators now. I put more blame on special teams than coaching, and I agree. The special teams were horrendous.
Yeah.
God, terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, why does Jabril Peppers still have a job? I mean, we ask this every fucking week. You know, why is he still on the team?
No idea what he's doing back there when they kick the ball to him. He just catches the ball and looks downfield. Where's the nearest crowd I can run into? And he
That's what it seems like.
Tackled.
Well, the one that really got me was when he wasn't sure. He stopped because he thought he was in the end zone, and he wasn't. He doesn't seem to have a sense of awareness to be playing that position.
GPS chip in the helmet, maybe?
Yeah, right.
Maybe that's what we need, a GPS chip. You are here. 10-yard line. Run with you, son of a bitch.
Brian Baylark is in the chat room saying Todd Haley is a fool for having Baker take that deep shot when Baker threw that pick. Well, let's stop here because Baker said that he did have an underneath thing and he should have gone underneath and milked it down a little bit more and gotten field position. That was on Baker. Baker took the shot because Callaway was on the field and did a 2-move and a double move, and it didn't work.
We addressed that in the post-game press conference, like you just said. Yeah, he admitted that. Yeah.
That play, it's like I tell everybody, Brian. I tell people that on every play, we see where the ball's thrown, but there are multiple places that ball can get thrown to. And there were opportunities to throw that ball underneath, and he chose to do that. And again, I don't blame Baker Mayfield for wanting to win the game. That was a bad decision. All right.
So, Mr. Moohead, what do you say to some of these Raiders? Because I was watching your last video. Our last Hangout was just golden, by the way. And you had, of course, some Raiders fans oppose or criticizing our video, and some of them were saying that the Browns got away with some calls as well, like the stoppage for that their running back had on it.
Lynch tried to get stopped on the sideline. He sort of blasted a couple and then kept running, but they had already whistled the play dead.
Yeah.
They whistled, so the Browns stopped defending on that play.
I was wondering what y'all thought about that.
Well, I mean, again, fans are going to see it through the prism of their fandom, and I understand that. And at no point did I never really said that the Raiders didn't deserve to win the game. I just said that the referees took the game against the team that did actually win the game.
Yes.
I got no hard on against the Oakland Raiders. That's just not part of my way. There are some teams I don't like the Steelers. There are some teams that I don't like the way that they play the game. They play the game dirty, and I think it's bad for football, bad for the health of the players who are playing it. Brian also was saying you knew they'd be going for 2 at that point. There's no way we should have let them get that. And you have to have a plan, and it looked like it was just like man-to-man coverage, and we got beat on a fade, and you hate to get beaten on a fade like that. But so it went down. Joe Fox is saying, Joe Fox is saying, why is every Hugh Jackson game always a 3-point game? He's not a winning coach. Up 28-14, you got to win that game with a very large margin. Give Chubb the ball in the fourth quarter. Okay, we'll respond to that. You're up 28-14. Probably the biggest misgiving I have is why, when you're up 28-14 and momentum's all on your side, why did you immediately attempt a pass on first down without even testing the resilience or the will of the Raiders at that point in the game? I think that's a bad play call. And it was a bad job by Hubbard blocking. It was not Baker Mayfield's fault. And on a short drop, the guy rushed in and got his arm because the guy was pushed right back into him. Hubbard did not do his job. So that is a misgiving that I have after the game. But is that Hugh Jackson? Hugh Jackson didn't call the play. Todd Haley called the play. And again, where I get down on Hugh Jackson is not using timeouts efficiently, not knowing where the challenge flag is, saying one thing and doing another, saying you're behind somebody and then abandoning them. These are the things that I have a problem with Hugh Jackson. I think he's full of shit, okay? I don't think he's a motivational guy. I think that he is like a politician and that he literally will say anything at the moment and do a 180 literally a day later, and no credibility whatsoever.
But you know what, Mr. Moohead, this was the first loss yesterday that I've heard in a long time where Jackson actually wasn't the topic of discussion in terms of the loss.
Yeah, well, I mean, and Chad, how you doing, Chad? In the chat room, a huge wave of hate locally here in Cleveland for Hugh, and I think, when you have that record, that is going to be the case. But I think worse than anything is there's no humility in Hugh Jackson, and the abysmal record is instead of just keeping your mouth shut and keeping your nose clean, Hugh Jackson is defiant in the face of his own ineptitude. And I think that's why there's so much dislike, is that this is, a results league. And just like this last game, it's a result, we're 1-2-1. And that is the reality of it. We don't like it. We don't think it's fair, but that's what it is. It's a results-oriented league. And the results, Hugh Jackson should not have a job. I'm not going to argue with anyone. Anybody who watched all 16 of the post-game shows last year knows and watches all my programs what I think of Hugh Jackson. But I'm not going to sit here and send out a lynch mob for Hugh Jackson after this game specifically, because there was a lot more going on in this. I just felt as though we needed a rest. Our defense needed a rest. And a timeout might have given us enough breath for that one final surge to stop that team. And they didn't get that breath. So
game ran almost over 4 hours, wasn't it?
Oh, God.
It went on and on and on.
Stats here on the Cleveland Plain Brown Wrapper said they gave up 565 yards to the Raiders.
That game reminded me of the Stephen Bishop song from Tootsie, on and on, on and on, on.
That's a real whiny song there, Mr.
Oh, it's probably the most whiny song ever written. And, there's only one thing worse than getting that ending after all that time. That was having to eat my dinner at 9:15 at night. So I barely cow. Yeah, and I barely ingested any food because I can't really eat very close to sleeping. So it was like, fuck, it nailed me in every possible way. I did want to point out that the worst song ever written, though, On and On is probably the whiniest song, but the worst song ever written, that is the only song I can think of that is truly boring, I mean, I thought music either inspires you or it makes you move, or like,
You want dance. Yeah.
I'll give it a 10, Mr. Clark, because you can dance to it. You know,
Great song, you can dance to it.
the wreck of the Edmonds Fitzgerald.
Gordon Lightfoot.
That song is hell to dance to. You can't get a groove on that at all.
Legend lives on the towers. I mean, and
All of them sang to the bottom.
there is no chorus to the song.
Correct.
It repeats the same thing for almost 5 fucking minutes. And, you know, halfway through, it's like, let the fucking people on the boat die already, because they would have if they had to listen to
They
this.
would have jumped off the fucking boat halfway through the song.
Put it on that. Let's describe the Great Lakes for you.
Yeah, I know. Superior, they say.
Water goes in here.
And Lake Erie catches on fire. Alistair Erskine is asking, Mr. Moohead, why did we abandon the run in overtime? And it's like, you know, the overtime seemed to come and go so quick, and it seemed like a fait accompli that really didn't focus down on it. But, you know, I don't think the Browns really believe in the run, even though Chubb ran the ball 103 yards and 3 carries. I don't think
Yard average.
Yeah, they're not sold on the run, and they.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. You'd have to ask Todd Haley that question, but I would have thought that it was important to get a long drive, not just for a chance to kick the winning field goal, but in case it stalled out, that your defense gets rests. But we were just 3 and outing, and we were in and out, man. It was just like too fast, and that contributed to our demise as well. And they were, you know, and I'm going. I want to give a guy props here because, and I actually wrote to him, and I think that he may have felt that I was dissing him when I was actually complimenting him. There's a guy who puts up videos of the plays of.
That dude who reads the plays. I think it's for international people who can't get the game or something.
No. This guy actually breaks down footage on.
Oh, not
Twitter.
not the guy I'm talking about. The other guy. Okay.
Yeah,
Why is it?
Yeah, and I'm trying to. I would love to give him credit, but you know, Twitter isn't always the easiest thing to navigate. You can't seem to go back and get your replies to people and all of that. The bottom line is I thanked him for putting up all the videos so you could, it was what the Browns did well, what they didn't do well, but. I just wanted to give a shout out because
does he comment on your videos?
I'll say again.
Does he comment on your videos? Is he in the comment section?
No. I mean, I don't know where to find. You know, he and I. Let's look at notifications. Okay, Brown's Film Breakdown is his name.
I don't know that guy.
Yeah, and follow him because it's really good.
No, I fucked off Twitter, but.
It's really good. When I wrote to him, he misinterpreted, unfortunately. I wrote, I appreciate your film breakdowns, really great stuff, but it's impossible to break down and analyze the motivations of the league and its officials. We can only guess, and I think we both know. And he responded here, nobody here is reviewing their motivations. And it's like, oh, dude, you missed the point. You're getting too sensitive.
He misconstrued it.
Yeah, right. I mean, but it's a great service. Brown's Film Breakdown. It's all one word, Brown's Film Breakdown. Follow him because he shows really relevant plays, both where the Browns succeeded and failed and what happened on the plays. What he wrote, and I believe him because he's showing both sides of good and bad and not really commenting on deserving to win, not deserve to win. But what he said was the last half of the fourth quarter on every play, Myles Garrett was being held. And it's right there on the film.
Totally.
And
so much of that.
So, again, I think
5 plays alone.
Yeah.
That's just on what I saw.
Yeah. And Todd Haley is trying to turn us into the Steelers when we're more like the Ravens. We need to be more of a running team. And this was a problem in Pittsburgh. I thought Pittsburgh was always a running team. And when they went to being more of a passing team, it hurt the Steelers, I thought. It really did.
That's an interesting comment. I wouldn't have come up with that. That's a good comment.
Yeah, and Alistair Erskine is saying, why does Colin Cowherd have an agenda against Baker Mayfield? And again, it's an act. It's for ratings and
whole shtick.
Yeah, well, and it's no different than the hatred of LeBron James by what's the douchebag's name?
Stephen A. Smith.
No, the guy who used
Skip Bayless.
Skip Bayless. Yeah, I mean, it's that you can always hit a hot spot with the Browns fan base if you say something really rotten and stay on it and just beat it to death like a dead horse. And that's all Colin Cowherd has going for him and what his agenda is against Baker Mayfield is that Baker Mayfield really is good and the Browns are really going to end up being good. And I keep telling people, you got to be a little more patient. This is year one of a rebuild. I really think this team is going to be 500 or better next year. I think
definitely.
Yeah,
another draft that we've had.
Another John Dorsey draft, not a fucking
right.
idiot draft.
That's right.
A competent draft. We finally had a competent general manager.
What position would you guys go for in the draft? Just curious.
Defensive back, safety.
Position.
Coach.
Coach.
Well, no,
you draft a coach.
Look, what I can tell you is we don't. The jury is really out on Callaway, who dropped a lot of balls, and Njoku, who dropped a lot of balls.
Yeah.
And those two receivers just may not be in the mix long term whatsoever, because we've seen guys who have crab claws and it never works out. So the Browns are going to need real receivers, and bigger receivers who can fight for that ball for Baker. That's the first thing that I see. I think what's really nice, you've got Carlos Hyde, you've got Nick Chubb, you've got Duke Johnson, and that's all great stuff. I apologize about the dogs behind me. So your running game should be set. Your offensive line, look at Desmond Howard. One holding call in the beginning of the game, but boy, you never heard his name being called in a bad way, and we ran the football. He's doing his job and getting better. He's melding into the offensive line. That's great stuff. There are things that we still need. I think that Jamie Collins' position will eventually have to go someplace else because he's not going to be around for long, because that's the history of the player. And I agree that Jabril Peppers is not a guy who's going to make it. He's not making plays as a free safety. And we're going to need somebody who's a real center fielder who can police. I think those are important things. We need a kicker. There's no question about that. A more solid force kicking the football. And we need to draft more athletes who have the ability to play special teams. Yeah. And you've got to find somebody who can also return kicks.
Yeah, I think we definitely need help in the secondary. I mean, I'll reserve judgment on these wide receivers only because they haven't played with Baker and they're still incredibly young. So if there's still shit like 3 games down the road into end of October, then we'll have to draft a wide receiver number 1. So I'm going to give him a chance.
Yeah, Felix James says, what about Hugh? Does he come with next year's team? He doesn't come at all. He's impotent. Okay, so there's your answer to that question. No, I don't know the split between run and pass for the season, and I think that it won't be quite as glaring as you think it is, Alistair, but I will say this, that it's when. That is the issue. It's like, when you have the ball on the 1 yard line, you pass and you don't run, or you choose to do a weird end around thing, and talk about Keystone Cops and Three Stooges. I mean, I don't know how many times Hyde and Callaway almost collided in the backfield running these plays.
Can we stop that play completely?
The only
The only
misdirection I can see is the players. I mean, they're running into one another. I mean, it's really peculiar. So I don't think it's necessary but I think the split would actually favor Todd Haley and weaken your argument, Alistair, but your eye test is correct. It's the inappropriate times that we run and pass that doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to anyone. So Brian Baylark saying we shouldn't have gotten rid of Gordon until the end of the season. Well, let me put it to you this way, because Gordon we run out of patience with him. But if Baker Mayfield, if you had some kind of a funky hot tub time machine, and the 2013 Josh Gordon was along with Jarvis Landry, all right, then Baker Mayfield would be twice as good as he is.
Oh,
right?
definitely.
So we are one, prolific wide receiver away from having an offense that will score 24 to 28 points every single game. All right. That I'm sure of. I'm absolutely positive of that. And all it takes is the one right guy, and the wide receiver has to be a priority. We already prioritized running back with Chubb, and that was a questionable pick, but it's starting to look better by the game. And, we prioritized our defensive line, which has really, by and large, done a pretty good job. They did tire out. And we probably will need more depth at that position. I think that Chris Smith, the guy who is the rookie that they drafted, he has not looked good in his time in the games. Those wide pitches that they ran with beast mode were run at him, and he was not spelling the first line defensive line well. Or is it Chris? What is his name? I don't know either, but he's the guy who people wondered whether he was even going to make the team, but because he was a pick of the new administration, he kept his job, but he has not been effective as a backup. Alistair saying Todd Haley thinks Callaway is Tyreek Hill. He doesn't track the ball well. He doesn't catch the ball well. I mean, he's an explosive guy speed-wise, and you got to find ways to get him the ball in the open field, but he's got to catch it first, That's
he only had 1 year at Florida playing. I mean, he's a young guy, man.
Well, and maybe he can be kind of a guy who is a player who is a third option, and you can put him in certain situations, and people have to be aware of him, so that when you have another great wide receiver, they'll leave Callaway open, and that can leave big plays.
I agree. I mean, a slot guy, number 3 guy, that would be ideal, wouldn't it? I think everybody would agree with that.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or he reminds me of a second coming of Braylon Edwards? He can't catch a cold. He's got stone hands.
Well, that's kind of Njoku. I look at Njoku.
Njoku as well.
Njoku
I think they need to let him go.
Yeah, Njoku is Willis Adams. That's who Njoku is. Go back and read about Willis Adams, and you'll understand. Then, the Braylon Edwards thing, the jugs machine, the whole 9 yards. Braylon Edwards couldn't. I mean, it was
psychological with Braylon. He can catch whatever.
He could get open. Sure enough, he could really get open, especially side the numbers. I mean, he could be wide open, but he just couldn't catch the ball. Just like you said about Njoku. You said this, Mr. Moon, last year. The man can't catch the ball. Even on the drag pattern coming across the other side of the line of scrimmage, you hit him right in the numbers, and he drops the ball every time.
I'm in total agreement with you. I mean, so right off the bat, you're going to need to make Baker Mayfield great. You need to have a running game and reliable receivers, and it's that forces the defense into choices.
To play you honest.
No winning choice.
I don't understand why Browns don't do like how they used to do. When you run the ball, have a lead blocker so you can get the explosion you need in the hole. I like Hyde, but he just finds a way to run into traffic.
Yeah,
you understand. He runs.
Yeah, he's a guy who, if there's nothing there, he'll try to bounce it outside, but he neither has tremendous power nor tremendous speed. I mean, what was really interesting to me was, Nick Chubb, who is really advertised as an old school running back who would be comparable as a north-south runner to Kevin Mack in the old days.
Mm-hmm. Downhill runner.
Yeah, downhill runner, right? But you saw him outrun everybody. I mean, and you say, wow, he's faster than Hyde is, and he's strong. You saw him break tackles, and I think that the more he learns, the better he's going to be. But all this makes me feel good. To make Baker Mayfield as good as Baker Mayfield can be, you got to give him options where he's comfortable throwing to people who are going to catch the football.
Exactly.
And and he forced the ball downfield to Callaway, who can't fight for a ball anyway. You got to give him big physical receivers, who can go up for the ball if he wants to try to make a big play down the field, so that's an incompletion instead of an interception, or all of the things that you got to fight for the ball harder. And we don't have that set of receivers on our roster yet.
I just don't understand how we continuously blow it in the red zone. You're inside the 5-yard line. Run the young man that you drafted. Run Chubb. He can explode and push up into the hole and fall forward. They tried to do that jump. You guys were talking about that herky-jerky, hand it off to this guy and this guy get it. Why are you doing that and you're that close? I've never understood why the Browns do this type of jump. You get a first down, and then you try to do some old crazy, magical, Lucky Charms play, and it blows up, and you're second and long, third and 100 yards. It's just ridiculous.
Carlos Hyde, one thing I noticed, even on short goal line situations, Carlos Hyde tends to wait for his block instead of just slamming into the line and just getting the yardage to get it into the end zone.
He did that at Ohio State, too.
Sometimes you just need to just jam it and just go,
You got to code into the hole. And they don't have a lead block and all that spreading it out and everything. If the Browns want to be successful, you're going to have to play in late November, December. You're right on the fucking late. You got to have people that can hold the ball, take control of the ball, have ball security. You're not going to be able to punch it in when your running back is 5 to 6 yards back from the line of scrimmage.
Yeah,
we need a proper fullback. We need a fullback like Ernie Green back in the day when Leroy Kelly was running. I remember Ernie Green. So, yeah, we need a fullback then.
Alistair is asking, I was concerned with Greg Williams' game plan. What was his plan to stop Jared Cook? And that's a fair question, too. What we didn't know going into this game was how bad the field was going to be. And it wasn't like either team was really putting on an outstanding pass rush on the quarterbacks, because I don't think there was a lot of traction on the field. The game plan was obviously, if you're in single man-to-man coverage against people, that you're bringing people. But if the offensive line is allowed to hold and you have a slick field, and what it turned out was that the grass was not as long as it is on a normal NFL field. What was explained to me in the aftermath of the game is that they had cut it for the baseball game so that was infield grass, what you were looking at, and short grass, and then the dirt, of course, in the infield. And that length of grass, because it was too short, was causing everybody to slide around. That it really cost traction. And I think that affected both teams' pass rush, too. I think Greg Williams is doing something that I would have liked to have seen and more of in the past, which is relying on your defensive backs to cover wide receivers to try to get pressure on the quarterback. But it just did not work out because we couldn't get to Carr, and Carr, quite honestly, gets rid of the ball very quickly.
And they weren't calling holding penalties either, obviously.
They weren't calling roughing the passer, they weren't calling holding, they weren't calling anything except... Yeah, you know what?
The NFL league needs to get rid of like Oakland, for example, how they have that dirt, like you were talking about, that grass, baseball length and all like that. I think that dirt should have been took off of the field. You understand, when you're playing the pro game, because see, you're risking people's injury and all that type of thing. You understand what I'm saying? This foot may be in dirt and you're in grass and you can slip and tear something up on you, you know?
Well, it also costs kickers field goals. So, yeah, it's not something that you like to see, but when the grass is cut as well, you know, it's like I said when the game was at halftime, it's like the NFL should step in. If the team can't afford a facility, then maybe Oakland shouldn't have a football team like they thought they shouldn't years ago.
Exactly.
Maybe enough is enough here. They got to move that franchise someplace that will put a reasonable professional facility together.
I agree. I don't think that's right. I don't think that is fair to the players who have to actually play on those types of surfaces, because they're practicing and everything, and they're not practicing on a damn baseball length grass and dirt. So why should they have to play the actual game on that? And that I don't think that's too kosher. They need to cut that out.
I don't think they're going to change it because I think the Raiders are moving to Vegas, so they're like, "Fuck it, why fix it if we're already going to move?" Right?
Yeah, I don't know when the Vegas facility will be ready. I think they'll be playing in a shithole in Vegas for a couple of years. There's a crap field that they have over there too.
Oh wow!
What in Vegas? What field are they playing in? Are they building them?
Carson Field or something. You can look it up on the internet, but it's like a 30,000 seat, university type stadium.
Well, there's a standard that has to be upheld, and that certainly wasn't it. And I think that alters things. And I think that also, let's be honest, it contributes to a high-scoring game. When the quarterbacks have more time to throw the ball and the wide receivers know where they're going and their defenders don't know where they're going and people are slipping on the field, the people who know what direction they're going, I mean, let's be honest, Callaway wouldn't have been as open on the slant. There wouldn't have been people as open down the field for the Raiders.
I think Chubb, too. I mean, that benefited him. People trying to catch him.
Yep. People were sliding all over the place. And I think that contributes to a 45-42 final score. I don't think Hugh Jackson is going to be fired at the bye, as far as what people are talking about in the chat room. I think the Browns have been competitive in every game they're in, and I think that you might lose the team at this point if you prematurely jumped on that. I think by the end of the year, you're going to have a decision that's going to have to be made. But honestly, to do it now, I don't see how it helps the confidence of young players. I want these guys to have an opportunity to do everything that they can do. And I don't want them to have, a diversion in front of them that takes their mind off what their duties and responsibilities are.
Is it possible, people, that if this doesn't be successful, okay, say they keep way in there until next year, is it possible that we're looking at Haley being the interim coach?
I honestly believe that Dorsey already has a guy. The one thing that I see about Dorsey is that he's experienced, and he wasn't coming to Cleveland and have Hugh Jackson rammed down his throat forever. Yeah. I think that he has a hip pocket guy. I don't know who that guy is, but he has one. And we're not going to touch our coordinators, I don't believe, except the special teams guy is going to lose his job.
8 hours.
I hope so.
Yeah, but that's kind of how I think it's going to go down. But no, I don't think at this point, interim, there's no reason at this point. I think you let it play itself out. You get rid of Hugh at the end of the season, and you have Dorsey bring his guy in. And
who do you think he has in mind, per se? If
I don't
Dorsey
know.
Is really that's the $1 million question. Who do they have in mind?
Look at the tree. I mean, everything always comes down to the tree in the NFL. So I don't know enough about John Dorsey and his experience with the with the Kansas City Chiefs to know who he crossed paths with through all of his years in football. But you might be able to piece something together if you take a look at the tree that he came from. That's all. I don't have a guess, though.
Mr. Moon, I had a question for you. If y'all were to let go of Hugh Jackson, whether it's this season or the offseason following next year, do you really expect the tide to turn right away, or do you think it's still like a 1, 2, 3 step process with Dorsey and Haley and everybody else?
No, I honestly believe that next year this team will be vying for a playoff spot. I did not believe that. I thought it was going to be 3 or 4 years, but I believe now that with the emergence of Baker Mayfield, I really honestly believe. I mean, when you compare it to Josh Allen on the road getting 0 points, and you look at Darnold on the road getting 0 points, and you look at Baker putting up 42 on the road in his first start, and there's no comparison right now between these young quarterbacks. We got the best one, and Rosen putting up 17 points and not enough to win. This is impressive what Baker Mayfield is doing, and he's doing it coming off of a 1-31 roster of people who, and when our wide receiver gets a cramp, we have to put Rod Streeter in the game, and I don't even know who the fuck that is. We don't have depth at the wide receiver position, and this would all help Baker Mayfield. You give him the guys that he needs on the wide receiving core and on the offense, and maybe a better right tackle.
Could Jim Tressel be a possibility?
No,
I'm just reaching.
I would suffocate him in his vest and bury him deep under the ground.
Sorry, I just thought I'd ask, but I was just reaching because to me it just seems like the locker room, you have to have enough of the players that know what it constitutes, what the city wants, and they're wanting wins. You can't win 3 damn games. That's in your division. Try to be at least 500 in your division and then build from that. But they won't do it. They let Pittsburgh draft from Ohio and everything. Once again, you can't get these sunshine guys and you're playing next to Lake Erie. In order to be successful, you're going to be playing ball next to the fucking lake. And it's cold as shit out there.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I'm convinced we're heading in the right direction. I think people want Rome built in a day, and you can't desecrate the roster the way that the Browns did and just immediately jump back into contention. This is going to be faster than I thought, which is going to be a great thing as long as Baker stays healthy. He's going to learn a hell of a lot, and he learned a hell of a lot yesterday.
Mr. Muhead, I just got a quick question. With the ongoing problems of the NFL and the officiating and the whole same old Browns thing and the storyline with this bad officiating, even if you release Hugh Jackson, do you think this is going to be an ongoing problem for next year if the NFL sort of has their heart on for the Browns struggling?
No, I tend to believe that once it becomes apparent that the team makes a play that matters at the critical moment, these things do go away. I mean, we've been bad before, and I think this has been an incredibly long spell. But I think that the marketing of the league takes over. If Baker Mayfield is a star, it's just like LeBron James and the Cavaliers.
We'll start getting calls. If Baker Mayfield a star, we'll get the calls.
The Cavaliers were the worst team in basketball, and then LeBron showed back up, and then we're suddenly the best team in basketball, right?
And then he leaves, and then we're the worst team in basketball.
That's right.
He comes back again, and we're the best team.
Yeah. League
to
marketing
me, I see the difference. I see the difference when numbers.
Do you think it'll attract other free agents, like big marquee free agents next season?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, if you're marketing Baker Mayfield and people see the kind of yardage he's putting up, his accuracy, there will be wide receivers who just will really want to come here. But I think I want to see a young, strong, physical receiver that can grow with Baker Mayfield. I want to see these guys grow together. It was really great watching Baker slapping Chubb on the helmet. These are guys who are going to be on the team for a good long time. And we haven't had that feeling of permanence in this organization for a long time.
We need a generation. We need a generation of guys. I mean, the 80 teams were generation guys. Deacon and DeValmer and the linebackers, Matthews and all that lot. That's a whole generation.
You knew what to expect. I mean, and plus, when you're ascending together, it bonds players and it makes them closer. And I think that they learning how to win together at the same time, and they will get good and even better together. So I think.
I don't know if you guys see it, but the team, when they implemented him into the game, the whole team, the morale, even the stadium itself was uplifted. They were blocking. They were giving him time.
Shut the door.
And I think that these guys, they really believe in Baker Mayfield from what I'm seeing, the eye test.
And I think people will believe in him too. Free agents will see that he's for real, and I think top receivers are going to be very happy coming to Cleveland, knowing that he's going to be the one throwing to them. I think that it's all good news. I really believe next year is the year, guys. It's already 6 minutes after 7, and I got to move on out of here. But the final word for me is unfortunate, but. We put up a good scrap. We didn't play a clean enough game to win the football game. I'm not going to sit there and say that this was a pristine performance, but it was far better than what I expected from Baker Mayfield, especially after watching the 1:00 games and watching Josh Allen and watching Sam Darnold. I mean, it's night and day. It's really night and day. So we got.
I agree. I appreciate you for having me on. And you guys take care. I got to get out of here myself. But thank you, Uncle Moo. Y'all be cool, man.
All right, you be good. All right, final word from our panel. We'll start with Stephen. You wanted to say something. What's your final word?
Yeah. Well, it was a question, but I'll just say it. Hopefully, I'll just say a statement. Hopefully, they will improve on the officiating in this game against the Ravens, because I understand the Ravens are only allowing opponents to score 20 points in the second half combined in all their games, all 4 games. I'm hoping the Browns can figure out some sort of strategy, and I hope the officiating just improves from this horrendous game that they called. That's all I got to say.
All right, Rick, what do you have to say? You're going to take care of that cough too, buddy.
Yes. Well, Roethlisberger and Flacco, they're heading into the finish line. Dalton's been at Cincinnati forever, and Marvin Lewis can't win a playoff game. So give the Browns another draft, make a coaching change, get everybody, together, and I think the future is going to start looking bright for the Browns.
I agree.
Can't argue with that. And Bronk?
Well, I mean, the most impressive thing about Baker Mayfield I saw yesterday was his post-game interview where he took responsibility for the things he could take responsibility for. He was dejected, but not, without hope. And he was an honest, young man. So the guy's a proper winner, and we finally found a quarterback here in Cleveland. Thank God for that. Yeah.
All right, everybody. That's it for me, and that's it for this edition of Moohead Radio. Back again end of the week on Friday, and we'll be talking specifically about the Ravens game. So don't miss it, because it will be an interesting pregame analytical kind of a show. Thanks to all the people on the panel. Thank you, and thank you for tuning in. And until Friday, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.